Okay, hello everyone. We are going to be cooking today. It's so good to see you. I hope that you were able to convert all the fractions and now you should be ready to cook. Before we start cooking, there are a few things that are kind of rules in my kitchen, and I found over the years that it makes cooking a lot more enjoyable. Cooking is fun, but it is not fun to clean up. So before you start, make sure that you're working in a clean area. So if you look, I have my kitchen, my counters are cleared off, and so I'm ready to go. I've also laid out all of my ingredients. You don't want to start cooking and then get in the middle and go, Mom, do we have any baking soda? And then find out that you don't, and then you have to stop, and it's sad. The other thing about cooking is clean as you go, because if you clean as you go, you will not be stuck with a huge disaster of a mess. So, Julia, you can show, I like to have a clean sink when I start, and I have a little thing of hot soapy water with a washcloth ready to go, because then if I spill anything or I have a spoon or something, I can just hurry and wash it, and then it's ready. Your moms will love it. Final thing is I have long hair. If you have longer hair, Julia's like, I have longer hair, and you do not want hair falling or into your face, and you really do not want it like going loose and getting in your food. So I'm putting on a hair tie, and I'm looking really cute now, but oh well. So we've got all this started. Our first step is you have clean hair tie, clean hands, clean kitchen. We're ready to go. You will need to get out your flour, sugar, salt, unsweetened cocoa. This is not like Nesquik. This is not the kind that you make into, for hot chocolate. This is what it looks like. It's unsweetened. It smells really good, but it tastes bitter. It does not have any sugar in it. So this is what you want. You'll want baking soda. This is my lovely container for baking soda, not baking powder. You'll be really sad. You'll also want white vinegar. If you do not have white vinegar, that's just clear vinegar. Apple cider vinegar, which is like brown, works. As far as things, you'll need a 1 cup measure, a 1/2 cup measure, a glass measuring cup. You can use this one twice, or if you have, I have one of these as well, that's a 2 cup measure, but you'll need at least a 1 cup measuring cup. And let's see, salt, sugar, and you'll need a cake pan. This is a 9 by 13 inch cake pan. No, you do not have to grease it. Julia's asking, for this recipe, you do not have to grease it. It does have a lot of oil, so it will come out of the pan somewhat okay. Okay, our first step is you need to turn on your oven to 350 degrees. And I'm going to turn on mine. Okay. Our next step is we're going to measure all of the dry ingredients into our pan. This is really nice because we don't have a lot of things to clean up. And this is a fun recipe. So I've got a measuring cup. This is a 1 cup measuring cup. And I'm also getting out my knife, and I want to show you how to measure flour. So come on over. This is my huge bucket of flour. I apologize that you have to see it. Normally in those cooking shows, they have everything in little bowls, but I want to keep it real for my students because you probably have like either a bag of flour or a bucket of flour or a container. So this is how you measure. If you pack it in really tight and see, look at that. we could call that a cup, but if you dump that in, you have well more than a cup, and you'd end up with a pretty dry cake. So here's what I normally do. I just lightly put it in the measuring cup. It's not all the way full. I take the flat edge of my knife, not the rounded edge, the flat edge, and I take and I just swish it off. Go like that, and now you have a lovely 1 cup of flour. We will need 2 more of these. And I just take it off. Take it off. So I've got 3 cups of flour, and then I am measuring out my sugar, which is 2 cups. This, because sugar is so shifty, I don't generally do all that. I just measure it to the top and then dump, because it's not like flour. It's not gonna go, I just shake it a little so then it goes even. So I have 2 cups of flour. Our next thing is a 1/2 cup of the unsweetened cocoa. And really, it smells delicious if you taste it. I remember tasting it.
I've tried, it's disgusting.
Okay, now the thing about this cocoa, and I am not going to do the full amount because the recipe calls for 1/2 cup. 1/2 cup is very nice and dark chocolatey. If you want it a little less chocolatey, then don't make it the full amount. But there we go, we have a 1/2 cup of cocoa, and I'm just dumping it in. You can see that it's kind of lumpy, so I'm just patting it with my knife to get some of the lumps out. And now we add 2 teaspoons of baking soda. This is let's see, and I'm looking at my measuring spoons. This is my 1 teaspoon measuring spoon, and I dip it in, and then let's take our knife. I take my knife and I just scrape it off. When I dump my baking soda, I like to look and make sure that there are no lumps, because baking soda tastes like soap. It's horrible. And if you ever hit a baking soda lump in your cake when you're eating, you'll go like this. So I like to look at this. You could take a little sifter and sift through these, but I was concerned that you may or may not have a sifter at your house. A sifter looks kind of like this, and it will take out all of the lumps. If you have one, use it. If you don't, it's okay. Now, the soda is what's gonna cause the air bubbles to rise and cause the cake to have little bubbles all throughout it. Without it, you'll end up with kind of like mud. It'll be really dense and not very great. Oh, here I am, I'm putting my measuring cup. We're not going to be using that. And when I'm finished, I just set it off to the side. Our final thing is salt, which is kind of surprising. You don't think salt is very important. This is our final dry ingredient. You don't think salt is really important, but it is. It balances it out, so don't forget the salt. Now, I've got this bunch of dry ingredients. I am going to take a whisk. You could also use a fork to mix this all up. So take a fork and see, notice I'm kind of smacking the little lumps of cocoa down so that it mixes. I personally think we start off with sand and we end up getting kind of this light dirt color. See, and can you guys see these little lumps of cocoa? I just have to be patient. You just stir. Now, you don't want to stir crazy and dump it all over your counter, so just be careful, be steady. Don't feel like you have to be in a rush. You'll notice like there's some white, but things are starting to look more all of the same color. We're getting less, whoops. See, this is why you have a washcloth. I'll wash it here in just a second. Whoa. Here I am saying, don't rush. This is what happens when you rush. Now that's the fork. Let me show you what it looks like with a whisk. The whisk is like having several forks working for you. See, I'm just trying to get all of it mixed in so that it all looks about the same brown. Now, you'll see that there are these little teeny clumps of cocoa. I'm doing my best to get those out. You'll have just maybe a few in there. This will be okay. Now, we're just about at the point where we've mixed all of our dry ingredients. I have a few areas that are just have a little bit of, you see a little streaking of white. That's from the flour. So I'm just working to get that out there. I'm gonna take my fork, oh, look at that. I'm gonna take my fork. Now it looks kind of like hot chocolate powder that you would use for Nesquik.
Or cake mix.
Or cake mix that you would buy at the store. Okay. We've got it all stirred up. I'm gonna bang this. I'm gonna stop right now. I have spilled some stuff, and so I want to hurry and get that cleaned up, because if I don't, then all the stuff is gonna go all over the place and get on the floor and cause a huge mess. So it's good to clean up as you go. It keeps the mess down. So I'm wiping that off, throwing it back in. You know what you also would probably want, I like to have a little towel if my hands get wet, so I can dry them off. So our dry ingredients are ready. Now we add the wet ingredients. And our first thing that we're going to add is 2 tablespoons of our white vinegar. By the way, this is where the magic happens, because the vinegar, you know what, you've seen what vinegar and soda do together, baking soda. Well, the soda is all through here. So the vinegar is going to hit the soda eventually and cause it to kind of puff and make little air bubbles. And those little air bubbles will get trapped, and when you eat your cake, you will see cool, light little fluffy bubbles through the cake. So I'm gonna just dump 2 tablespoons of vinegar, and you can see it's already starting to kind of foam, which is pretty cool. I'm also going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I heard Mrs. Doss said to have everything laid out, and this is the one thing that I did not lay out. You don't like that one? You don't want this one? You like the other?
Oh, I'm fine.
Julia is saying, Mom, not that vanilla. That one we got a bad batch of in Mexico. So this is the good vanilla. I like it, but you can use any kind of vanilla. This is Mexican vanilla, and one of my students gave me a bottle of it for Christmas. Okay, I'm adding 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And then I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of vegetable oil. Now, there's a trick when you're measuring liquids. You want to take your cup, your measuring cup, put your measuring cup on a flat surface. Julie, are you able to get a good, can people see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, I am going to measure to this little mark that says 3/4 right there. So you want to be down level with the measuring cup. I'm gonna hold it like this so you can see it. And I watch until it hits the 3/4 measuring cup line. Okay, can you see that? Now, if I were measuring it up over right here, it looks like it still needs to go up a whole lot more. So that's why you want your eye to be level so that you get an accurate amount. Oh look, our oven is ready. So I'm putting in the oil, and the final ingredient, when I'm throwing in this into my soapy water, our final ingredient is 2 cups of water. And some recipes that I looked online said cold water, some said warm. I just said go for regular water. So once more, I'm gonna measure, I'm pouring it, but then notice that I'm down low. I'm not measuring it looking up here. I want to have an accurate, an accurate amount. If you ever wanted to try an experiment, that would be a fun one, to measure and see what it looks like above, and measure it and see what it looks like from the side. It's surprising the difference, because you're deceived to adding more. So, final thing is the 2 cups of water. Now, you can use the wire whip, or you can use the fork, or you can use a spoon, but we're gonna just mix these things up together. Now remember this you have to be kind of careful with. Remember that I put the vinegar over here, but the vinegar has got to touch all of the baking soda throughout it. So we just gently, really gently stir. And you don't want, just take your time. You don't want to stir tons and tons and tons. You'll get kind of a tough cake. It'll be kind of chewier. So you just go slow. Now, the other thing I love about cooking is you have to be very observant. While you're doing this, you'll notice that right here it feels really thick, and over here it feels like chocolate milk, and over here it feels like mud. So what you want is, you don't want one area to be like chocolate milk and the other to have the same thickness as mud. So you just very carefully and gently work these two together so that in the end, it's probably got the consistency of, I would say, chocolate pudding. Just pretty, it's not like chocolate milk. It's not like mud. It's more like pudding.
Cake batter.
It's like cake batter, but you know what? This could very well be your first time making cake. See, notice how those lumps of chocolate, those cocoa powder, are starting to kind of dissolve in this with the liquids. You can see little streaks of them. And also, do you notice that we're seeing bubbles? And that is the action of the baking soda hitting up with the vinegar. And it's surprising because we did, oh, whoa, look at that. We did not add a whole lot of baking soda, and we really did not add a whole lot of vinegar. But it's interesting how just such small amounts can have such an impact. This recipe is one that I used to make with my mom when I was quite little. And since then, I have made it with all of my kids. And someday I'll probably make it with my grandkids. Now look, we've got dry and we've got wet. And that tells me, oh, we gotta work. It's starting to feel more like pudding in here. On the edges, it's a little, feels like a little bit like chocolate milk, but slowly everything's coming to be the same amount. And I'm doing this pretty slowly. I'm not just, because do you see all these bubbles that are coming? We want those bubbles. And if I beat this too much, all those bubbles will break. And that's where we end up getting chewy cake and not tender cake. You want it tender, not real thing. Now, I'm just going over this one last time. Everything is pretty even. I'm smoothing it out. And I'm gonna just take this, clean off that edge. And now we're gonna put it in our oven. Come on over, Julia, follow along. I like to put the cake in the middle rack. That way you get heat all around. And if it's on the bottom, sometimes it'll cook just on the, it'll cook more on the bottom. So put it in the middle. One other thing I have to say is my little cooking teacher in elementary school told me to keep your oven open a whole long time because you lose temperature and then it has to get back up. So we're at 350 degrees. I am going to set our timer for 40. Well, you know what? I'm gonna set the timer first for 35 minutes. Yeah. And we'll check it at 35 minutes. It may need another 5 minutes. So we'll stop there and I'll see you here in 35 minutes. Okay, so I'm poking it in. You can see there's nothing on it. I'm poking it in the middle, nothing on it. So we know that our cake is all cooked. Also notice that washed all my stuff in my kitchen, and you'll want to cool this before you put anything on it. Like frosting, if you put frosting on hot cake, the frosting completely melts and you have a mess. So cool it down and then you can frost it, okay? Okay, so I just pulled this out again. We cooked it for another 5 minutes. I've got my toothpick. I'm gonna poke it in the middle. Remember last time it had that kind of brown stuff on it? If you can see, there is nothing on it. That's in the recipes, they call that poke the toothpick, and when it comes out clean, then it's ready. So the cake is really hot right now, so you'll want to let it cool before you put any kind of frosting. Although I have to say my personal favorite is hot cake with vanilla ice cream. Okay, I also need to have you noticed that I've washed everything up while we were waiting for the cake to bake. And now our cake is cool, and I'm gonna show you a really fun way to decorate your cake. Like I say, you can put frosting or ice cream or Cool Whip or whatever, but I am going to just sprinkle it with powdered sugar. This is a heart that I cut out of paper towels. I'm just gonna set that right there. I've got my little sifter, and I'm gonna take some powdered sugar, and I'm just sprinkling it carefully Just keeping it in the cake zone. You don't want to go into the other zones. You don't want to start sprinkling somewhere off on your countertop. And this is probably maybe a couple tablespoons of powdered sugar. So I'm gonna now put this off to the side and very carefully take and there we have it. Isn't it cute?